Love is a journey two people take together. A journey of discovery.
She was a college student, a very, very smart girl with a bright future ahead of her.
He had aspirations to be a rapper, and he was good at it.
They began dating. They became inseparable.
And when you're ready to ride or die, you have to be ready to go wherever the journey takes you.
She had two different lives she was living.
Who are you with?
I don't even want to say no name.
She was clearly a ride or die for him. She wanted to protect him at all costs.
Because sometimes the dying is real.
He is deceased in the passenger side of his friend's vehicle.
And sometimes what you find at the end of the journey isn't a life together, but a life sentence.
She was like, basically, if I did know, I wouldn't tell you.
She had this level of loyalty for him that she did what she had to do to help her man.
June 30th, 2012. It's a humid weekend in Baton Rouge, Louisiana.
Baton Rouge, as I knew it growing up, was a very lovely place, full of culture, very family-oriented.
But in the years since Hurricane Katrina, the city has changed.
After Katrina, when we had a lot of people moving from New Orleans and other areas into Baton Rouge, you had the rivals and you had the turf wars and that kind of thing, so the city started getting more violent.
Like most cities, you have the fear of walking alone or driving at night now because of the crime.
At 2 a.m. on this balmy Saturday morning, fear becomes reality.
911 is flooded with calls to the Baton Rouge Police Department.
We received a call that there had been a shooting.
When police arrive at the scene, they find a car sitting at a stoplight.
There was shattered glass all over the concrete and people were screaming.
They discovered that there were two victims that were injured.
The driver of the car, Andre Miles, has a bullet wound in his foot.
They were sitting at the traffic light and his foot was on the brake, and one of those shots that was fired into the vehicle actually hit him in the foot.
Andre tells the police that the shots were fired through the window at the passenger in the car, Jordan Key.
He's worried about his friend Jordan, who's also been shot. Officers take Jordan's vitals and they find that Jordan is deceased.
Our focus is now, who is this individual? We have to find out who is he so that we can start putting the pieces together.
Growing up, Jordan Key had always been the boy that everyone liked.
Jordan was a very loving child. He came from a family that was full of love, a joyous family.
He was such a hilarious kid. He loved to play jokes.
Jordan was very, very talented in more than one way. He can draw. He was also an amazing dancer.
When his family moved from California to Louisiana, the talented jokester quickly made new friends.
Jordan and Andre met in high school, and they became friends instantly.
They hung out a lot and they were really like brothers more so than best friends.
Around that same time, Jordan also found his true ambition.
In high school, Jordan and Andre were both connected to the local hip-hop scene in Baton Rouge, and they were very well known.
I always wanted him to sing in the church choir because he had the talent, he had the gift, and he had the voice. But being a young man, he chose to do rap.
After high school, Jordan joined a local rap group, and he started recording as often as he could.
Jordan also wanted to further his education.
We were making plans of him entering into a community college.
With Jordan planning to go to college as well as his music career, he really had a bright future ahead of him.
But now, Jordan's promising future will never come to fruition.
Jordan Key, the deceased, had suffered a fatal gunshot wound to the head area.
When the devastating news reaches Jordan's family, they're heartbroken.
The morning I found out that Jordan had been murdered, I wasn't feeling really well on that day. And my dad called me. And he said, well, there's been an incident. Jordan and 𝕊𝕬𝕚 were shot last night, and Jordan didn't make it. I felt as if the world had just completely stopped.
My daughter Gina called, and they always expect me to be the more calm one. But it wasn't a pleasant moment. There was a lot of crying.
Meanwhile, homicide detectives arrive on the scene and make contact with their surviving victim, 𝕊𝕬𝕚𝕝.
Andre explains that after going to a party, he and Jordan were on their way home when they stopped at an intersection.
The two victims were sitting in the vehicle at a red light, just listening to music and talking, and all of a sudden, shots rang out. He felt this pain in his foot, and Jordan is not responding to him. And it was at that time he looked to his right and realized that Jordan was injured.
He says that he didn't get a good look at the gunman because the gunman came up from behind them on the passenger side of the car.
It isn't too much to go on. But as EMTs prepare to transport Andre to the hospital, the police find another witness.
James Logan was a security guard who was just getting off of his shift, and he says that he was at the light and saw everything.
James happened to notice a black male get out of the passenger side of the vehicle that was behind him.
James described the gunman as a black male wearing a white t-shirt and dark shorts.
While he's watching the guy walks over to the car and he pulls out a gun and fires 3 shots into the car.
As a security guard, James was armed. He told police that he got out of the car, drew his weapon, and told the man to drop the gun.
His bravery, there's not enough words to describe it. He didn't even think about it. Honestly, he thought like a first responder.
James says that the gunman jumped into a black sedan as it sped away.
He says the driver was also a black male.
As the vehicle sped away, James got the license plate number.
Investigators put out an all-points bulletin with the license plate number that James Logan provided.
The bulletin immediately pays off.
Right away, they get a hit. A patrol officer spots the car.
That officer immediately puts on his lights.
This officer is in full-on pursuit of the alleged murder suspects.
On June 30th, 2012, Baton Rouge police are in hot pursuit of the suspects responsible for the fatal shooting of 18-year-old Jordan Key.
The suspects attempted to flee the area, but the area that they tried to flee ended up being a dead end. They bailed from the vehicle and they fled on foot.
The officer chases them through the woods, but they manage to escape.
After detectives receive word of what's transpired, they swiftly arrive at the location.
Now police have a second crime scene to analyze, and that's the getaway car.
Inside the car, investigators find what they believe is the murder weapon.
There was a handgun on the back floorboard.
The gun appears to be jammed. This might explain why the suspects never fired any more shots at the witness or police who were chasing them.
Police hope that the vehicle's license plate is the key to tracking down the suspects.
We're running license plates and VIN numbers to find out who is this vehicle registered to.
The car is registered to a woman named Sienna Washington.
We knew that it was a female. We also knew from our witness that the individuals that were in the vehicle were definitely all males.
Was the car stolen? Or is there a connection between the suspects and the woman registered as the owner?
Investigators head to the address found on Sienna's vehicle registration, hoping to find the two perps there.
When detectives arrive at the address, they're met by a man who identifies himself as Sienna's boyfriend, Frederick Gaines.
Frederick told the detectives that Sienna was not at home. She was at work.
Something immediately stands out to detectives about Frederick.
Frederick is a match for one of the suspects seen fleeing from the vehicle.
We start inquiring about his girlfriend's vehicle. He informs us that she had been robbed.
He said the car was stolen in a recent carjacking.
Detectives are highly suspicious of Frederick. They ask him to come back to the station for a formal interview. Detectives begin by asking Frederick for more details about the carjacking.
The day before, somebody stopped her and demanded money. So she got out and they drove off.
Frederick insists he doesn't know anything about Jordan Key's murder.
You have anything to do with it? You were nowhere around College Drive tonight, right?
He denied any involvement. He denied just everything.
Frederick isn't willing to budge. And even though they believe he's one of the assailants, they don't have enough evidence on him to make an arrest.
Detectives soon get a call that sends the case spiraling in a new direction.
He said he knew the individual that did the shooting.
He said, you need to talk to Chatley Chesterfield and his girlfriend, Essence Dyson.
I don't hope this happened to any family, but it does every day in Baton Rouge, and I know it's happening in other places. And every time I see this, it does something to me because they're so young. The kids that's dying young and the ones that's doing it is young. There's no more old-fashioned fist fights, you know, high-five me, we're good, bye. It's the gun thing. And it's really sad that we've come to this.
In 2012, detectives in Baton Rouge are investigating the murder of 18-year-old Jordan Key, who was gunned down at point-blank range while stopped at a red light.
Police believe that a man named Frederick Gaines may be one of the assailants, but they need to gather more evidence before they can say for sure.
That afternoon, detectives receive a mysterious phone call that points them in a new direction.
According to the informant, the people responsible are local rapper Chatley Chesterfield, who goes by the name Chad the Youngin, and his girlfriend, 19-year-old Essence Dyson. The informant says that's all that he can tell them at this time and hangs up.
With just the names to go on, investigators start by checking their database.
When they do a background check on Chatley, they realize that he has been arrested before and has a few priors.
The arrests weren't for anything serious. In fact, they were classified as juvenile because he was only 17.
19-year-old Essence Dyson has also had some run-ins with the law.
She did have a criminal record. It was kind of minor. There was a simple robbery, a simple battery on her record. We wouldn't describe her as a hardened criminal.
Essence had a real good family. They gave her a lot of support.
She was adored by her mother and father. She was a college student at LSU, a math major, a very, very smart girl with a bright future ahead of her.
But Essence was no ordinary college student.
During the day, she was a student, and then during the night, she was, she had two different lives she was living.
Essence Dyson loved the hip-hop lifestyle, the thriving music scene in Baton Rouge.
She was very, very closely affiliated with a lot of these little rap groups that were feuding with each other.
And that's how she met Chad the Youngin Chesterfield.
He had aspirations to be a rapper, and he was good at it.
At 17, he was already on his way.
Chad was a part of the Kane Music Mafia, a local rap group in Baton Rouge.
Essence met Chad at a party for prominent Baton Rouge rapper Mr. Kane.
And they had the same friends, and they hung around each other, and Essence would go to Chad's concerts, and her friends and his friends, they all would hang out.
They began dating. They became inseparable. The two were always together.
Was the murder of Jordan Key another incident in the violent feuds of the Baton Rouge music scene?
Jordan was an aspiring rapper.
Baton Rouge police were already investigating multiple incidences between the city's rappers.
There were multiple task forces trying to get a hold of all this, and so these different groups were being identified, members of the groups. We just noticed that so many of them had a common name that was affiliated with them, and that name was Essence Dyson.
If Jordan was having a beef with Chad Lee Chesterfield, it would give him a reason for Chad's girlfriend, Essence, to be involved.
Investigators wanted to question both of them.
Detectives follow back up with the surviving victim, 𝕊𝕦𝕝𝕝, to see if he knows them.
Andre says that he's known both Essence and Chatley for years.
He actually went to school with Essence, and he knows Chatley from the neighborhood.
In fact, Andre now recalls that he saw Essence not long before the shooting.
Andre had been working as security at a party, and he was waiting for the person who was supposed to pay him to come and bring the money.
There was this big parking lot where people would hang out after the clubs had closed. So Andre and Jordan were waiting there for the guy that was supposed to pay Andre.
Around 2 a.m., Andre and Jordan went into the store for a few minutes.
They went in and, used the restroom, but when they came out, they actually saw Essence.
Essence was standing there. And of course, they stopped and had a conversation with her because they knew her.
Andre says they talked outside the store for a couple of minutes.
They stopped and they talked, just, friendly. What are y'all getting into? What are you doing after this?
They asked her if she needed a ride. She said no, she was waiting on her sister to come out of the store. Andre said that the interaction felt strange, like something was off with her.
After retrieving Andre's payment, the friends parted ways.
Andre said that they told Essence goodbye and left the parking lot. Minutes later, the shooting occurred.
To detectives, the timing certainly seems suspicious.
Their #1 priority is now tracking down Chad Lee Chesterfield and Essence Dyson.
Later that day, detectives received word that although Chatley is nowhere to be found, police have located Essence.
We transported her to our office.
Will she be the key to finally unraveling this case?
She just had this very negative demeanor.
She was clearly a ride or die for Chatley. She wanted to protect him at all costs.
18th, 2012. Baton Rouge detectives are sitting down with 19-year-old college student Essence Dyson regarding her possible involvement in the shooting death of Jordan Key.
A phone tip had pointed police toward Essence and her boyfriend, Chad Chesterfield, and Andre Miles, who was with Jordan when he was killed. told the investigators that he talked to Essence in the parking lot only a few minutes before the murder.
Getting any useful information out of Essence will be easier said than done.
She just had this very negative demeanor. Basically, if I did know, I wouldn't tell you.
Oh, okay. Who are you with?
I don't want to say their name because I don't know if they want to get involved with the police. So I don't even want to say no name.
Detectives continue to press Essence, and she finally starts to open up.
She admits that she knows Jordan Key and 𝕊𝕦𝕝𝕝 and that she saw them that night at the store.
There was nothing nefarious about it. It was just a chance meeting.
Essence says it was soon after they left that she caught up with Jordan and Andre at a stoplight.
I was right behind their car, but I didn't see nobody walk up to the car because we was at the red light and I was on my phone. You know, you ain't supposed to. And I just heard gunshots. I look up.
What's the description of the guy that you saw?
He was like a little taller than me.
What color shirt were you wearing?
White.
And one thing she's sure of is that it wasn't Chadley.
And you're familiar with what the shooter would look like if it was somebody that you knew?
Yes.
There wasn't nobody that you knew?
It wasn't.
Essence said that she never saw her boyfriend, Chadley Chesterfield, that night. As far as she knew, he was at home the whole time.
Detectives ask Essence where Chadley is now. And that's when she completely clams up.
And we kept pressing and pressing and pressing, trying to get information. Then finally, she was just like, I don't have anything else to say without a lawyer present.
You're digging yourself into a hole that you're not going to be able to get yourself out of. So that's your statement?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I think you're making a terrible mistake. I think you're gonna regret this.
Can I just go home?
Until they can strengthen their theory that she and Chadley are behind this crime, they must let her go.
Now that they have a statement from Essence, tracking down Chadley becomes the focus of the investigation.
We have officers out and everyone's telling us that he's not there.
It was an elaborate plot by all of Chad's supporters to hide him. They even named it Run Chad Run.
It was just everywhere on social media. To think of the amount of people that actually participated in the Run Chad Run movement was disgusting.
The search for Chad eventually expands outside Baton Rouge.
The Baton Rouge Police Department enlisted the help of different law enforcement agencies.
We had the U.S. Marshals involved, state police involved.
It takes over 3 months, but the effort finally pays off.
They find him hiding out in Baker, Louisiana, which is just about 10 miles outside of Baton Rouge.
When they question Chadley, the investigators get straight to the point.
Were you involved in that shooting?
No.
Do you know anything about the shooting?
He denied being present. He denied everything.
Who put you up
I did
to
not do it.
Okay, who did it?
I don't know.
So what you running for?
Cause if I turn myself in, I ain't trying to go to.
He started off saying that he didn't know anything about the shooting, wasn't at the intersection. Then he changed it to say he had a friend there who looked like him, and maybe that's why they thought it was him.
The detectives keep pushing, and Chad's story changes again.
Tell me what happened.
I was in the car with Jason. I don't know if y'all know right now. I was in the car with him. I just seen somebody walk up and start shooting. I ain't gonna lie, I wasn't trying to see who it was because I was ducking.
Chadley claims that after they heard the gunshots, he and Essence took off.
Chadley said they never contacted the police because they did not want to get involved.
So that's a statement that you want to give?
I did that statement.
Chatley's version of events is entirely different from what Essence Dyson has told investigators.
Essence never mentioned him being with her that night, but Chad won't budge on his story.
In fact, Chatley downplays his relationship with Essence.
You and her tight then?
Who, me and Essence? I've been knowing her, but we ain't close like that. Like,
Y'all not, or y'all weren't?
We just talk to each other because we've been knowing each other.
Getting nowhere with Chatley Chesterfield, detectives decide to circle back to ℂ𝕦𝕦𝕝𝕝, who they still believe was the likely getaway driver in the crime.
Perhaps now that they have Essence and Chatley in their crosshairs, they could use that to get ℂ𝕦𝕦𝕝 to flip.
And detectives are in luck.
He feels the walls are closing in on him, and he's ready to tell it all.
Frederick was just following orders.
In July of 2012, Baton Rouge police believe Chatley Chesterfield and Essence Dyson are behind the murder of 18-year-old Jordan Key. But with both suspects giving very different accounts of what happened that night, they're hoping the possible getaway driver, ℂ𝕦𝕝 can help them clear things up.
They want to speak to him again to see if he will flip on the other two.
If you willing to take the charge of pulling that trigger, that's on you. I know you didn't do it, but that's fine. That's totally up to you. It's totally up to you. Well, now it's your time to help yourself. You've been there already. You see what I'm saying?
The threat of ending up back behind bars causes ℂ𝕦𝕝 to cave.
He kind of felt like, okay, well, they got me now. And he decided, Dad, I'm gonna come clean and make this right and just take responsibility for my actions.
You're gonna break it down right now with this. Break it.
ℂ𝕦𝕝 admits that he was driving the getaway car that night, but claims he had no idea what was going to happen after he agreed to give his pal, Chatley Chesterfield, a ride home from the club.
He wasn't aware of what he was about to get himself into.
ℂ𝕦𝕝 says that Chatley was constantly on the phone during the car ride.
Chad was talking on the phone, and he had the phone on speaker.
He was talking to Essence Dyson.
That's one of the chicks who Chad was, I guess, messing with at the time. So you recognize Essence's voice? Yeah, I recognize her voice.
And ℂ𝕦𝕝 could also hear what they were talking about.
He said that Essence had been following Jordan Key that night for Chatley while he was doing his show at the club.
Essence told Chad that she'd spotted Jordan and his friend Andre outside a local convenience store.
Told to Chad about telling him, you know what, they right here, right now. Chad was like, well, keep an eye on him. Stay close to him until we get there. But we already in the car on the way, so now when I hear this, though, I'm like, I'm asking them, like, man, what did it do? What's going on here? Man, we got into it with him a few months back or something. We just catching up to him.
According to ℂ𝕦𝕝, Essence kept Chad continuously informed of Jordan's whereabouts.
I see them, they're over here, kind of giving a play-by-play.
When Jordan and Andre left, Essence followed them in her vehicle. She continued to keep Chatley updated on where they were going.
ℂ𝕦𝕝 and Chatley caught up with Jordan at a red light.
They pulled up to the light and he saw Essence clear as day in the car right behind Jordan Key.
He's like, well, that's the dudes right there in that first car. And that's Essence or whoever else in the car behind him was following him. And I'm like, so what you about to do? And he's like, we about to see you. Before I know it, he just jumped out my car.
Chatley went over to Jordan's side and opened fire.
I
I was so scared.
As Frederick sat frozen in shock, Chatley ran back to the car and jumped in the passenger seat.
And once he got in, he was like, man, go. He like, man, you better get us away, man. We can't get caught out here like this. I just made sure I got away.
But the two men didn't make it far.
He tried to outrun the police, but ended up taking a turn onto a dead-end road. So they abandoned the car and fled on foot.
After they bailed out of the car, he and Chatley split up. He made his way back to his girlfriend's house to lay low.
Frederick claims he was afraid to tell the police what happened in his initial interview.
I just seen you kill somebody.
Frederick said that he saw what Chatley did to Jordan firsthand, and he was afraid that if he didn't keep quiet, he would be next.
Frederick also says he's since learned why Chad wanted Jordan Key dead.
They had a disagreement and a problem that stemmed from some rap songs.
Both Jordan and Chatley were very talented local artists. Chatley was a part of Mr. Kane's Kane Music Mafia. Jordan was a part of a different group. And their beef started really over rap lyrics, and it just spun out of control.
They did have some type of rift between the two parties because some music had been taken away from the party that Jordan was with. So they were in a disagreement about that. But we didn't think it was anything that was of a major concern, that it would lead to Jordan's death.
The motive is the last piece of the puzzle.
After speaking with Frederick, detectives finally believe that they have a clear picture of what happened that night.
Essence and Chad were both charged with second-degree murder.
Police also charged Frederick Gaines with accessory to murder.
Since Frederick agreed to cooperate with investigators and testify against Chatley, his charges are eventually dropped.
Investigators are hoping the same type of deal works on Essence.
She could get her charges reduced if she pled guilty and testified against her man.
Their biggest priority at this point is getting a guilty verdict for Chatley, since he was the mastermind and the triggerman.
But prosecutors never could have imagined just how dedicated Essence really was to Chatley, Chad the Youngin' Chesterfield.
She felt like Chatley was her ride or die.
I think she would have felt that she betrayed Chad.
Moving forward through this journey of losing a child is very painful. Every day is not sunshine, roses, happy, but every day is not dark either. There are a lot of dark days, but we do have a time where we can embrace what God gives us, His love, His peace, His joy. And although this is a very, very negative situation, there is always hope in this journey. And I just want to encourage mothers to hang in there and take it one day at a time, one moment, 1 minute, 1 second at a time. And we will make it. We will make it.
Of 2012, police in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, have finally pieced together what happened in the tragic murder of 18-year-old aspiring rapper Jordan Key.
Investigators believe that a rival rapper, Chatley Chesterfield, who goes by the name of Chad the Youngin', targeted Jordan with the help of his girlfriend, Essence Dyson.
Chatley and Jordan apparently had beef over some stolen rap music.
With Chad Chesterfield identified as the shooter, the prosecution hopes Essence will agree to testify against him at trial.
The district attorney was willing to reduce the charges against Essence in return for information that would guarantee a guilty verdict against Chad, the person that actually pulled the trigger.
To everyone's surprise, Essence refuses to make a deal.
Essence Dyson stuck to her story. She said that she couldn't testify against 𝔬╗ because she had no information to give prosecutors.
I think she would have felt that she betrayed Chad. So Essence didn't want to testify.
She felt like 𝔬╗ was her ride or die. She refused to turn against him.
In November of 2015, 𝔬╗ Chesterfield and Essence Dyson go on trial in East Baton Rouge Parish.
The trial was very emotional. The courtroom was full every time we went. Not just with our family and friends, but his friends and family as well.
There was a lot of tension between the Chad and Essence friends and family side.
However, Essence and Chad aren't bothered by the tense mood in the courtroom.
Passing notes and talking and giggling and that sort of thing. Kind of like kids. I'm not sure if either of them understood the severity of what they were facing at that time.
She was smiling like nothing had ever happened.
I had to indicate to both of them that they had to be aware that the jury was always paying attention and looking, so they have to not be as playful or joyful, because this was a serious case.
Their apparent lack of remorse plays into the prosecution's argument.
Essence and 𝔬╗ were intentionally looking for Jordan Key to murder him in cold blood, and Essence did what she had to do to help her man. Ballistics confirmed that the weapon found in the abandoned vehicle matched the shell casings of the weapon used at the crime scene.
The evidence gathered from the getaway car proved that Chad Chesterfield was one of 2 men who fled the scene of the shooting.
There was DNA evidence on the handles of the car doors, on the murder weapon, and throughout the car.
But Essence Dyson was in her own car, and her attorney tells the jury that she had nothing to do with the shooting.
Our defense was that this was a chance meeting, and while Essence was present in the area, she didn't have any criminal culpability in any of this.
Her lawyers argue that even if she did let 𝔬╗ know where Jordan was, she never knew that he was going to kill him.
When the case goes to the jury, they side with the prosecution.
They find Essence guilty of second-degree murder.
She was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole.
𝔬╗ is also found guilty of second-degree murder. But since he's underage, his sentence is decidedly less harsh than Essence's.
Chad, who was 17, could not receive a life sentence without parole.
He would be eligible for parole in 30 years.
Even though Essence was his accomplice, she could end up doing more time in prison than him simply because of their age differences.
While the sentences come as a relief to Jordan Key's family, they bring little comfort.
To me, they got what they deserved, but you're not gonna ever forget it. It's like, yeah, justice has been served, but what about the families that's left behind to grieve?
Not only have I lost my child, but he was robbed of the opportunity to show the world who he was, show the gifts that God had given him that was for the world to see.
One thing that I would want people to know about my grandson is that there was greatness on the inside of him, and it was taken away.
Essence Dyson will forever live with the consequences of the murder she helped her man commit.
I just wish that this could have been avoided. Maybe she could have gotten that degree in math and been working for NASA.
A person like her comes from a great background, the type of family she had, the type of future that she would have had. I think it's unfortunate that she had this level of loyalty for him because it ended up costing her her freedom.
To young women, please don't get yourself tied up with these guys that call themselves gangsters and, you know, this is kind of lifestyle with the fast money and the cars. That's not all it is to life. You know, you can do better with your life than that.
For some women, love means standing by your man, no matter the cost. And ride or die means you're ready to go wherever your man takes you. But when that ride takes you on a road of no return, you may be asking yourself if the price was really worth it. After being diagnosed with a rare medical condition, Chicagoan Tiffany Jacobs is looking for a man to help her feel normal.
Tiffany just wanted to put the pieces of her life back together again.
But her dreams of romance are shattered when she falls in love with a man who drives her to do the unthinkable.
Floyd had a mind of his own where anything could set him off.
Gotta go! Tiffany was opening herself up to a whole world of trouble.
And later in Spokane, Washington, from the time she was a child, Jackie Wortham's defiant nature has caused turmoil amongst her small family.
Anything under the sun that you can name, Jackie did it.
And when she joins hands with a lover who adds fuel to her fire, it scorches a malevolent path of domestic destruction.
Edmund was her cheerleader in the worst way.
I don't think Jackie had any second thoughts or concern about what they had done.
There are hundreds of thousands of women in prison at any given time in the U.S. These are the true stories of women who committed heinous crimes in the name of love. For my man. Brought up by a hard-working mother on the streets of Chicago, Illinois, 16-year-old Tiffany Jacobs is mature beyond her years.
And her mom was trying to make ends meet, and so therefore Tiffany was left to fend for herself an awful lot of the times, especially in the evenings.
Although she has the freedom to do whatever she pleases, the strong-willed sophomore manages to stay out of trouble.
Most kids who were in a situation where they're left at home a lot go to find something to get their minds off of being alone. But in Tiffany's case, he focused on school.
She stayed away from drugs, she stayed away from alcohol, she stayed away from peer pressure. She was pretty much a straight-A kind of student.
Despite her sterling academic record, the teen opts to forego college following commencement and enter the job force.
She worked for a bill collecting agency, and she did pretty well there, and she was very well liked by her coworkers.
When a child is left to grow up on their own, they can develop incredibly fast and become a very functioning part of society. But on the flip side, if they don't have the proper influences, they may be at risk to engage in really bad behaviors.
Over the next 4 years, life couldn't be more fulfilling for the now 22-year-old.
She worked hard and she was able to save some money, so much so that she got her own place. In fact, right underneath her mother, who it seems that she had a very good relationship with.
When we can finally get out from under our parents, the tendency is to feel a lot of freedom, to feel that self-empowerment, and therefore to be able to connect with other people, and certainly with people of the opposite sex.
All of Tiffany's hard work seems to be paying off, but now she's looking to play. And after testing the waters, she hooks herself a steady boyfriend in 25-year-old Tony Vincent.
Tony was a friend of a friend, and they started talking and kind of went from there.
He seemed very charming at first, and she fell in love pretty quickly. She loved the fact that he gave her butterflies in her stomach and was off to the dating races.
When we fall in love for the first time, it really does introduce a rush of emotions and feelings that has never been experienced before. And that's why it makes that first love so intoxicating, so intense.
But her dream romance quickly spirals into a nightmare when after only 2 months, Tony's seemingly warm heart turns dark.
All of a sudden, the relationship started getting abusive, physically and mentally, and then she broke it off.
After the relationship with Tony ended, Tiffany took a real hit to her self-esteem and just felt shattered and wanted to put the pieces of her life back together again.
To take her mind off Tony, the new single quickly refocuses on her job
but can't shake the lingering after effects. Though just a few years later, she finds out she has more serious issues to worry about.
Shortly after Tiffany turned 24, her mom and her went out shopping. And out of nowhere, Tiffany started to feel tingling and numbness in her arms.
Are you all right? Sit down, baby. Well, sit down.
Her mom noticed that her words started to be slurred and incoherent. She knew at that moment that something was dreadfully wrong. So Tiffany was rushed to the hospital.
Doctors tell her she's had a stroke, but can't figure out why. That is until a few weeks after being released, when she has 2 more. She's immediately scheduled for surgery to relieve pressure in the veins in her skull.
Tiffany's diagnosis ended up being something called ℧𝕦𝕝𝕝, which is a cerebrovascular condition which blocked arteries that go to your brain.
℧𝕦𝕝𝕝 actually originated in Asia. Primarily, it strikes children, but it can also strike adults too. And because it is so rare, we don't know a lot about this particular disease.
The surgery's a success, but as she begins to recover, Tiffany is a shell of her former self.
Her personality really shifted. She was once a very outgoing person to not being shy, and she kind of wanted the acceptance of other people, particularly men.
Medical problems can be a huge blow to your psyche. It could set you back mentally, emotionally, physically, but also it can change the very fiber of your being, sometimes for the better, but oftentimes for the worse.
To prove her self-worth, Tiffany latches onto any man who shows her attention, which her mother knows is a recipe for disaster.
She decided to apply for guardianship over Tiffany because she saw where things were going. She wanted to protect her daughter as much as she could.
For the next several years, Tiffany lives under her mother's watchful eye in the apartment she rents a floor below.
The ℧𝕦𝕝𝕝 had some cognitive effects on her learning, but Tiffany actually enrolled in a local college and was well on her way to getting her associate's degree.
At this point, she's 29 years old, and things just seem to be trending in the right direction.
Unfortunately, she's lonelier than ever and longs for a loving companion.
When our self-esteem is shattered, what we want is validation. What we want is acceptance. What we want to feel is attractive and feminine.
Human beings require companionship, and when they're hurt, well, that need is magnified. So having someone come into your life when you're in that emotional or physical state is exactly what the doctor ordered.
So while browsing the internet one day, Tiffany decides to check up on ℂ𝕦𝕝, an old boyfriend whom she dated just a few weeks her junior year in high school.
Tiffany was on social media, and Floyd must have popped into her mind, and she decided to do a little reconnaissance and found him and messaged him.
She's always had a special spot in her heart for the former flame, even though their courtship back then was unorthodox.
This wasn't your garden variety high school relationship.
He's actually 9 years older than her, and it liked the fact that she was a younger woman, but the relationship was cut short because he was arrested for an armed robbery.
Luckily for her, Floyd has served his time and promptly returns her note. And it doesn't take long for the pair to meet up and rekindle the feelings they shared more than a decade ago.
Tiffany knew Floyd was trouble, but she didn't seem to care.
And what happens next will blow everyone in the Windy City away.
Tiffany meeting up with Floyd was like opening up Pandora's box. She should have kept shut forever.
In Chicago, Illinois, Tiffany Jacobs reconnects with an ex-high school sweetheart, ℂ𝕦𝕝. And given her recent diagnosis of a rare brain disorder, having a man in her life has finally made her feel whole again.
When we have self-esteem issues, sometimes all it really does take is a kind word, perhaps a nice gesture from someone of the opposite sex in order to make us feel better.
After meeting up for a few dates, Tiffany learns the now 33-year-old is on parole, living in a halfway house and working any odd jobs that come his way.
They got exclusive pretty quickly. even in the face of this knowledge, and they just rocked and rolled.
Would you like to move into my apartment with me?
In fact, Tiffany doesn't hesitate to ask Floyd to secretly move into her apartment, even though they've only been back together a few days.
Tiffany knew that her mom would disapprove of her not only getting involved with an ex-boyfriend, but getting involved with an ex-boyfriend with a criminal record.
And so they tried to keep things on the down low.
For the next 2 weeks, Tiffany and Floyd carry on their clandestine relationship, and Tiffany immediately regrets her decision.
Floyd became controlling pretty quickly.
Do what I say when I say it.
He wanted to tell Tiffany, and did tell Tiffany where to go, what to do at all times. He wanted to be in control.
If Tiffany bucks his authority, Floyd doesn't hesitate to flex his muscles on his girlfriend or her family.
He started threatening her and her mother and telling them if they say anything, they'll have hell to pay.
You're unbelievable.
Feeling trapped, Tiffany believes she has no choice but to stay by Floyd's side, even when things take an ugly twist on a Wednesday evening in May.
At about 9:30 p.m., they were hanging out watching TV, and Floyd suggested they go get something to eat.
Tiffany agrees, and the pair sets out in Floyd's car for some burgers. But just a few blocks away from the eatery, Floyd changes tonight's order, saying he wants to do a job instead.
Try to do a job.
I thought you were done with that life.
Despite her misgivings, Tiffany reluctantly concedes.
Please, baby, I need you.
Floyd gives her a guilt trip and says all this nice stuff to her, and or she knows is he's willing to participate in an armed robbery.
A person in a very dangerous situation normally should run away. But when we look at their self-esteem, that fear of going outside the comfort zone, then they tend to stay in that situation even though it is not a healthy one for them.
Minutes later, they arrive at the restaurant on West Irving Park Road, where Floyd tells his girlfriend to park in the back and keep the car running.
Before he departed, he grabbed a bag and he started to empty the contents. And what was in the bag was a hoodie, some sunglasses, some fake teeth, and a pistol. At that moment, she realized that this was probably his plan from the get-go.
Following his orders, she waits outside while Floyd enters the fast food joint.
I mean, Tiffany had to be scared to basically participate in a robbery, but at the same time, she wanted to stand by her man and do this for him.
Meanwhile, in the restaurant, Floyd approaches the register, keeping an eye on the only other patron, Martha Osborne, a no-nonsense Chicago native talking on her cell phone.
I just ate. A friend of mine had called me prior, and I was going to return the call.
But before the lifelong pals can exchange pleasantries, Martha realizes something is amiss.
I had stood up to stretch my legs, and I saw a man at the counter with a gun. And I told my friend, call the police.
Hey, you!
Unfortunately, Floyd hears Martha's plea for help and swiftly orders her to the counter.
Let's go!
He points the gun at me and told me to go up front. So I thought I better do what he says since he has a gun.
Floyd had forgot to put his sunglasses on, so as she was walking up, she got a very good look at his face. So at that point, when he realized what was happening, he told her to turn around and then put the pistol at her back.
And there's nobody at the counter.
Hey, you! Come here!
So the manager approached the counter, and Floyd held his gun up and pointed at him.
Oh, calm down, sir. Hurry up back there! I don't have
The manager swears he doesn't have the key, claiming it's sitting on a desk in the back room. But Floyd isn't in the mood for excuses.
Give me the money!
He takes his hand and slams that register so hard that it went rocking. And he put the gun in my back. He said, if you don't give me the money, I'm gonna shoot her.
Meanwhile, outside, Floyd's woman is still on pins and needles.
Tiffany was in the car praying that her man would come back before somebody got hurt.
A person in a dangerous situation certainly should run away, but that need for love and acceptance is certainly a powerful motivator.
It's not your money. Just give it to me.
Hurry up!
As the manager continues to stall, Floyd orders Martha back to her seat, demanding she retrieve her purse.
I went to the booth. I was carrying a tote bag with my wallet in it, brought up my wallet to him.
While Floyd pockets Martha's billfold, the manager retrieves the key and hands over whatever cash is in the drawer.
He collected $400 from the register and left the restaurant without anyone getting hurt.
With loot in hand, Floyd makes a beeline for the car Tiffany has waiting, but not before hitting a roadblock.
When Floyd leaves the restaurant, he bumps into a man, and Martha yells, "Hey, this guy just robbed the restaurant."
Unfortunately, the man can only get a quick peek as the car peels out of the parking lot.
But what he did see is that it was a black Lincoln with a very distinctive bumper sticker that had the number 5 on it.
With that information, Martha called the police.
Meanwhile, inside the getaway car, tensions are running high.
Tiffany is frightened, and Floyd is having her race around street by street, neighborhood by neighborhood.
They're now waiting at stop signs and driving through the city, trying to get away.
As Tiffany clutches the wheel, Floyd continues to bark directions. It's a side of her man she knows all too well.
I think she's also thinking, this is the reason I broke up with this guy in the first place, and he's back here doing it again. But this time I'm involved.
It's only human nature when you're in a very stressful situation to make the wrong decision, especially if you feel that you have no other choice.
Just run the light. Just run it.
Floyd had her making sporadic turns, left, right, and now they're being trailed by 4 police officers.
The chase goes for miles, stretching from the city's 16th district all the way to the 11th. That's where Floyd orders his girlfriend to pull into a gas station.
Turn left up here. Turn left up here.
And as soon as they pull into a gas station, appears a police car. And so Tiffany panics,
Police.
at which point the officer fires 2 shots.
And later, in Spokane, Washington, young Jackie Wortham will go to the ends of the earth to emancipate herself from her parents in order to be with her one true love.
Jackie lost it all by hooking up with the wrong man.
But I never dreamt that this could happen.
Following her boyfriend's brazen robbery of a Chicago, Illinois fast food restaurant, Tiffany Jacobs speeds towards an armed officer who's trying desperately to end the dangerous chase.
Tiffany was shot once in the shoulder and once in the chest. She must have been terribly frightened.
Reeling from the barrage, Floyd escapes on foot, leaving his girlfriend high and dry.
She must have been devastated, heartbroken, and just confused. She's shot, she's left holding the bag, and he's gone.
Tiffany musters up the energy to make one last getaway attempt, but due to her injuries, can only make it to the parking lot of another gas station on an adjacent street. There, an armed officer pulls up behind her, and this time, she gets out of the car with her hands up.
They got her down to the ground, tasered her, and then handcuffed her.
Once in custody, Tiffany is charged with first-degree attempted murder, armed robbery with a firearm, aggravated fleeing, and aggravated assault to a government employee.
She was then transported to a local hospital for treatment of gunshot wounds.
The next day, detectives on the hunt for Floyd spot him walking calmly down 5th Avenue, and he's immediately apprehended. He is charged with 2 counts of armed robbery, aggravated fleeing, and unlawful use of a weapon by a felon.
So Floyd brokered a plea deal for 3 counts of armed robbery, and he was sentenced to 25 years in prison, concurrently with a 15-year sentence.
Following suit, Tiffany pleads guilty to armed robbery and unlawful restraint.
She got a 12-year sentence. It's like kissing away your freedom. And I don't know why she would let him put her in that kind of position.
Behind bars, Tiffany feels great remorse for her reprehensible actions.
She also wrote a letter to the judge stating about her brain disease and about her strokes she's had and how she was physically unable to resist Floyd.
By having this relationship with Floyd, Tiffany threw it all away. She had a life that was just turning around for her, and rekindling with this old connection from the past really ended up burning her.
The way we feel about ourselves can certainly impact the way that we look at life. And if we're in a bad place, if the wrong person comes into our lives during that window, then it will inevitably lead to some sort of disaster, as we've seen in this particular situation.
Tiffany's dreams of finding love crashed and burned when her man stole more than just her heart. Next, Jackie Wortham finds out that following the lead of a bad boy can sever even the strongest family ties. The daughter of common-law Spokane, Washington spouses, once darling Jackie Wortham has hardened into the Queen of Sass, earning her a nickname amongst her loving family.
What do you mean dressed like this?
Jackie was a sweetheart up until she was about 11 or 12, and she started getting this, like who I call Addie, this attitude.
This is the way I dress. Do you have a problem with that?
Jackie was rambunctious. She was lively, outgoing. She was everything, but she was also kind of down. So sometimes you didn't know what you would get from Jackie.
Unfortunately, the girl's volatile behavior only deepens the wedge between her mom and dad, whose relationship is already on the rocks.
And your daughter, what?
Jackie's parents were high school sweethearts. They were together for a long period of time, but they had their arguments.
Where are you going?
And Jackie's behavior took a toll on the family.
Seeing her folks at each other's throats sends the tween into an even deeper spiral, which only magnifies when they decide to call it quits.
When children grow up watching their parents fight, they take those memories and then act out some of those same behaviors, resulting in very damaged and dysfunctional relationships of their own.
Following the split, the pair remains civil and decides Jackie should live with her mom. That's when things go from bad to worse.
Things started to go downhill as she got into her teen years because Jackie didn't want to go by the rules that her mom set. She didn't want to do this, she didn't want to do that, she didn't want to have a curfew. She resented her mother.
Jackie ran free while she was living with her mom, so much so that it was a mutual decision that she moved to live with her dad, Danny Wortham.
Fortunately, the plumber loves his daughter more than life itself and is eager for the chance to set her on the straight and narrow.
Dan didn't make a lot of money, but he worked hard and he tried hard to provide for Jackie and himself.
He would take her to movies, he'd take her skating, he liked to do things with her. But she liked to do things alone.
Although Dad wants to give his coming-of-age daughter some freedom, her lack of maturity forces him to keep her on a tight leash.
So Terrence is having a party tonight. You want to go?
Yes, can I go?
Absolutely not.
She wasn't allowed to go off with her friends, and that made her angry too. She wanted to be free, free.
Dan wanted to bring structure into Jackie's life, and he was just ready to lay down the law, but also lay the world at her feet.
Little does Dan know his iron fist will push Jackie into another man's arms, setting off a deadly chain of events that no one in her broken family sees coming.
Despite the love that he had for his daughter, the feeling was far from mutual.
This is something happens in the movies, not that something really happens.
We're arguing in front of her.
Following her parents' breakup, defiant Jackie Wortham has been sent to live with her dad in Spokane, Washington.
When parents separated, the rules that they had in common as far as the household now change. And these separated parents each have their own set of boundaries. And in Jackie's case, was something that she used to her advantage.
But even with help from Jackie's grandmother, keeping the wild child at bay is a tall task.
What are you doing?
We'd get her in school, she'd go out the back door. We had her in counseling, but she had never followed through.
She was the typical classic rebellious teen, smoking, drinking, brake slipping, lashing out.
The behavior destroys her father emotionally, as he wants nothing but the best for his daughter. Unfortunately, each attempt to set her straight falls on deaf ears, and Jackie continues playing by her own rules.
Jackie would stay away from home multiple nights a week, and Dan would not know where she was.
She started hanging around with people that are older than her. Teenagers that sit around smoking pot. They don't go to school, and Jackie was attracted to them. It was fun.
When it comes to teenage hormones, we're talking about explosions, all right? And so when you throw in something like a separation into that mix, well, you certainly are looking at a recipe for disaster.
The teen desperately wants to drop out of school and be emancipated from her father, so she can live life her own way. But Dan is having none of it.
He would file runaway reports when she would not come home.
He went and looked for her throughout the city. He made phone calls. Eventually, he would find her. He'd bring her home, and the fights would just continue because she did not want to be there.
She said, "You've only got a year and a half. Just finish your education, and when you're 18, you'll be on your own." But I guess that didn't suffice.
Dan is at a loss as to how to handle Jackie's rebellious behavior and turns to friends and family for solace.
He cried on their shoulders. He was very emotional and he lent on them for support about his issues with Jackie.
Unfortunately, no amount of advice can stop Jackie from acting out. And the real trouble begins when another man enters her unsettled world.
Children quite often think that they know everything. They have this sense of invulnerability, but it's really because they really haven't seen the world and what it really is all about: the good, the bad, and the ugly.
While on one of her famous disappearing acts, Jackie crosses paths with Edmund Washington, an 18-year-old who knows the roads of Spokane like the back of his hand.
Edmund was a handsome guy. He had no criminal record, but he was in the streets all the time, and Jackie was attracted to that.
As the two bond, it's clear they have a lot in common other than physical appeal.
Edmund had been a runaway off and on for several years in his life prior to turning 18.
It's the life Jackie's dying to lead, and she quickly latches on.
They were pretty much inseparable. Wherever he was, she wanted to be. So when she ran away, she wasn't just going out doing random things. She was going to be with Edmund.
And what better way to push Dad's buttons than to tell him she's having her booze baby?
She played that ploy a couple of times, but it didn't fly. I'm pregnant, feel sorry for me, because she was always the little drama queen.
Jackie thought that her father would be very upset about her being pregnant.
Though instead of being angry, Dan offers his love and support, as he's done her entire life.
It's your decision, Jackie, dude. I support you.
He says, if you want to keep this baby, we keep this baby, and no one will ever take him away from you. But if you don't want this baby, and you really want an abortion, I will back that too.
Faking a pregnancy is very serious, and what I tend to see, my opinion, is that people who do that, it certainly is a cry for help. It certainly is an overblown bid to get attention.
No. Irate that she's lost the upper hand, Jackie storms out of the house and out of her father's life, threatening to run away with her true love once and for all. Only this time, the road to liberation leads straight to a dead end.
Dan had no idea what he was in for.
He was just a pawn in a queen's chassis, and nobody was.
In Spokane, Washington, 16-year-old Jackie Wortham has found the ultimate way to free herself from her dad's control. She plans to disappear for good with her boyfriend, Edmund Washington, a man she'd do anything to keep.
Desperate people do very desperate things sometimes. And if there's someone there who's cheering them on, then the chances of doing something really wrong increases exponentially.
After just 2 months of dating, the couple decides to pack their belongings. And when a friend lends them a vehicle, they hit the highway.
They have no destination in mind, but they're swindling gas money, whatever they can to make this trip happen.
Although it's not unusual for Jackie to be gone for days on end, this time her father is worried, given the severity of their most recent spat.
And Dan, once again, filed a police report. He doesn't know what to do but to keep looking and to just remain prayerful and hope that she comes back home.
She ran away again and again and again. Well, now it was full-blown. Danny was at his wit's end.
Nearly 2 weeks pass with no sign of his daughter, so he decides to take a drastic measure.
Jackie's dad had filled out a youth at-risk petition. In Washington State, if you have a youth who is out of control and you can't get under control, there are certain things you can ask the court to court order your child to participate in, to include counseling, drug testing, curfews, and so on.
When Dan texts his daughter about the pending legal action, it sparks her to return home. And when she walks through the door later that day, her entire family is waiting with a final, desperate plea.
They had an intervention with Jackie,
We're all here because we love
talking
you.
about how they were affecting their lives and how she was damaging her own life and the issues it was going to present.
We couldn't let her get away with just anything. And that's where Jackie snapped.
I can't believe you are all doing this to me. I'm not doing anything wrong.
The teen is furious that she's being bombarded and refuses help. She orders everyone out while she catches her breath.
She was very angry, so much so that it was a mutual decision that Jackie would stay with the grandma and grandpa overnight and then come back to Dan's house the next day.
And when she wakes up the next morning, it appears her personal storm has blown over.
She was just perfectly amiable, really nice and sweet. And then she called her father, and she says that she's going to come get her at lunchtime. And I said, why? And she said, because I'm going to go back to the house.
Lorene isn't sure leaving Jackie home alone is a good idea, given her penchant for running away. But she's not one to second-guess her son's parenting skills.
I felt that strongly about it. Danny's her father, and I never went against him. He's her daddy. He's a good one. So if he thought she could be trusted, so be it.
On his lunch break, Dan arrives to pick his daughter up and they drive home, exchanging only a few apathetic words.
The plan was for her to be brought to Dan's house, and then he would come home from work and he and Jackie could talk some more.
After getting her settled in, Dan heads back to the job, confident they'll work it out. He has no idea that Jackie won't be alone when he returns, and she's hatching a plan to emancipate herself once and for all.
I thought that she was just running away again. I never dreamed that this could happen.
While Dan finishes his hours on call, Jackie sits on the couch, plotting her final exit strategy.
I think Jackie knew that her father was never going to stop his crusade of trying to save his baby girl. And she probably felt that the only way that she could live her life the way that she wanted was for her dad not to be in the picture anymore.
It's around 3 o'clock when Jackie phones her boyfriend and tells him to come to the house. As the two talk, Edmund agrees that Dan is the only thing standing in the way of their happiness and something drastic has to be done.
I think he was her cheerleader in the worst way. He got out from behind his parents and he wanted the same for Jackie. And I think that he encouraged her to live the life that she wanted to live by any means necessary.
They finalized their plans where Edmund would hide when Dan returned home and what Jackie would be doing to distract him so his back would be to where Edmund came out of hiding to attack him.
When it comes to love, our sense of right or wrong can become blurred or jaded, and it becomes especially dangerous when we have anger issues.
To prepare for the ambush, evidence shows the pair rummages through the house and finds several items with which to arm themselves.
They find a sword, Jackie's knife that Dan gave her for protection. They got a baseball bat, tools to really get at someone.
4 hours later, Dan pulls into the driveway with a peace offering, hoping it will butter up his daughter.
He was going to pick up a pizza for him and Jackie and bring it home to his little girl.
You in here?
Hi, Daddy.
According to police, that's when Edmund pops out from the hallway and their plan is put into motion.
Edmund. It ends tonight.
Fuming, Dan gives Edmund a shove. That's when he reveals the knife he'd been hiding and lunges at the dutiful dad.
Edmund slashes Dan twice in the face and stabs him in the neck.
Dan immediately went down, and Edmund stabbed him multiple times in the legs and pelvis area with that knife, disabling his legs.
My legs! Stop, please!
Just then, Out of the corner of his wounded eye, Dan notices his daughter enter the fray and raise a baseball bat over her head. Is she going to save him from Edmund's vicious assault or put the nail in his coffin?
At that point, Dan could only pray that good would triumph over evil.
Jackie! Help me!
Dan Wortham fights for his life after being viciously ambushed by his daughter and her boyfriend in his Spokane, Washington home. His only hope is that Jackie will step in to save him.
As Edmund and Dan struggled, Jackie came at them with the bat. She hits her dad on his back. Edmund then jumps in with the sword and he starts slashing him.
In my opinion, Jackie liked seeing her dad suffer. It was like retribution, or I'm enjoying this now.
In my opinion, when it comes to attacking your own father, the person who gave you life, it takes a certain kind of detachment and it may be some sort of a personality disorder to do something so monstrous.
Within minutes, Dan's body goes limp, and the couple moves on to phase 2 of their plan.
Jackie and Edmund disturb the house, throw things around, make it look like there was burglary or a giant fight inside the house.
After staging the scene, they add the ultimate insult to injury.
They kill her father. He's laying there, and they go enjoy the pizza that he brought in as he lay dead on the floor.
When they finish, Edmund turns to Jackie and tells her they need to get out of the house.
Jackie and Edmund pack a suitcase with a bunch of Jackie's belongings. They take Dan's car keys and leave.
The pair quickly exits through the backyard and heads toward a vacant house where local outcasts have been known to hang out.
It's right above Spokane, and it was a known drug house.
2 days later, on Easter Sunday, Dan's mom and stepfather are worried sick.
I was terrified. I kept telling my husband, there's something wrong. There's something wrong.
Dan's parents were looking to hear some type of update from his talk with Jackie that went on that Friday night.
I was very, very upset. That's not like my son. We're very tight. When I call him, he answers.
Fearing the worst, they decide to make the 10-mile trek over to his place.
They noticed that his 2 vehicles were outside of the home. So they went, knocked on the door, but no one was answering.
It was pure panic. And that's when I called the police.
Within minutes, responders from the Spokane Police Department arrive on the scene. They too receive no answer when they bang on the door.
Mr. Wortham, police.
Patrol officers found the house locked up and secured. They forced entry to the house and were searching the house when they found blood.
And as they slowly make their way through the home, they find the source.
They saw blood splatter on the wall, lots of blood that collected on Dan, his lower part of his body. The scene was not pretty.
My impression was that the overkill on Dan made me very concerned that Jackie was involved in what happened.
I just broke. I snapped. And I went into more pain than I've ever felt in my life. I felt as if I was dying, too.
In a desperate pursuit for answers, police fan out and question neighbors in the surrounding area. That's when they get their first lead.
A friend gave them a tip that she could possibly be in the vacant home that's in the area, and they should try to look there.
They went there, there she was, sitting there with Edmund in a bed, leaning up against the wall, Indian style, shoes on, everything.
And I looked down and I could see blood on Jackie's shoes and on Edmund's shoes. At that point, Jackie started whispering to me that she wanted to talk to me and tell me what happened. And so we transported them to the detective's office where we could interview them.
Back at the station, the pair is questioned separately, and Jackie is more than willing to talk.
Jackie changed her story multiple times.
I'm pregnant.
At one point, Jackie told us that she was pregnant with Edmund's child and that her dad was going to force her to get an abortion. And she did not want to do that, and she wanted Edmund's help to save her child's life.
But when they present her with the mountain of evidence recovered from the crime scene, the teen quickly caves.
She showed no remorse, and she just confessed to her and Edmund cooking up a plan to kill Dan.
Remorse is where you have some sort of guilt or you feel badly or sorry for something that you've done which was shameful. But the interesting thing is that if you don't believe what you did was wrong, then it's almost impossible to feel that remorse.
For their crimes, 18-year-old Edmund is charged with first-degree murder. And despite being only 16, Jackie is charged as an adult with the same.
Jackie and Edmund put a lot of thought into how they were going to kill Dan, laying out their weapons and distracting him. But they didn't put hardly any thought, if any, into how they were not going to get caught for it.
I mean, I've forgiven everybody all my life for everything they've ever done to me. I say, yeah, no problem. Not this one. And I don't forgive her.
After 2 years of legal holdups, Jackie eventually pleads guilty to the charge and is sentenced to 22 years in prison. Her boyfriend promptly follows suit and is given the same sentence.
Toward the end, Edmund began to grasp the reality of what had happened and what was going to happen. I think he was more concerned about what he had done to his life than what happened to Dan.
Jackie has apologized for her heinous actions, though some continue to question her genuineness.
She's shed a few tears, but people are skeptical of whether the tears are real or if they're just for show.
Devastated my entire family. It was like tsunami, just slow. We have fought to come back, all of us. But there's an emptiness that's inside me that I can almost not bear.
Jackie lost her life and her future when she killed her father and brought Edmund into her life. She lost a loving dad, and she's going to sit in prison until she's almost 40.
Everyone has a past. But when you've hit rock bottom and finally come out on the other side, you're looking for reform, for change, someone to love the new you. But what if you put your faith in the wrong person? Maybe the love you were hoping to lift you up drags you right back down. And this time, there's no escape. May 21st, 2017, Dallas, Texas. The moonlit city is tranquil and quiet.
It was early morning hours of Sunday morning, so most people are sleeping.
Over on the west side of town, a motel clerk is just coming back to the front desk.
He had taken a quick break, but he was heading back to the front counter.
But as he peers into the lobby, he's met with a gruesome sight.
He noticed a body. He also saw the blood. He was instantly afraid.
Upon receiving the clerk's call, law enforcement swarmed the motel parking lot.
The clerk, he waves down the police and he gestures them to come over to the lobby.
Officers check the victim for a pulse and quickly determine that he is deceased.
He had a lot of blood in his upper area. He was not responsive.
You can see that he's been shot twice in the chest.
Police check the man for an ID, but his pockets are empty.
His identity wasn't known at that point, so they had noted his name as John Doe.
Who is this man, and how did he end up in a motel lobby dead? As detectives dig deeper, they'll uncover a tale of redemption turned horribly wrong, and a love-struck woman at the center of it all. "33-year-old Dallas resident Brittany Pollard has a new lease on life.
She was outgoing. She had bright red hair. And she wanted to be seen. She wanted to be noticed.
She would strike up a conversation with anyone.
Brittany was trying to make up for lost time. She had recently been released from prison for a crime she committed as a troubled teenager.
Like a lot of teenagers, Brittany was very rebellious. She was very smart, but instead of focusing on school, she fell in with the wrong crowd.
One evening, her teenage angst boiled over.
She got into a violent altercation with a family member and pulled a gun. She shot her relative.
It was a sheer impulsive act. She did not have any intent to kill the relative. However, her anger got the best of her.
While the relative only suffered minor injuries, Brittany was charged with aggravated assault. She then spent 8 years in a Texas correctional facility.
Initially, when Brittany went to prison, like most young people, there's the shock and disbelief.
Fortunately, Brittany's time behind bars helped her get back on the right track. And by the spring of 2017, she was finally rising from the ashes of her past.
That time in prison, there was a change that happened then, but it was as if she got the structure that she always needed.
Unlike a lot of folks that sort of use their past as a reason to not progress or hold them back, Brittany was trying to overcome that and push forward. She began going to school and working and supporting herself, and she was interested in mental health and helping other folks.
There's a genuine care for other people when you go into mental health. She was working towards that and actually was going to school to be a psychiatric nurse.
However, as Brittany continued to work on reforming her life, she couldn't help but feel like something was missing.
She really felt like she was missing that one piece. She didn't have someone to share her life with.
That is, until she met 33-year-old Brandon Jordan outside her apartment building.
He was selling snacks and cigarettes, trying to earn a few extra bucks.
Brittany struck up a conversation with the attractive stranger, and something happened.
Brandon was tall and handsome, and he was quiet, but he had a powerful presence, and Brittany was attracted to that.
Sparks fly. This is the guy that she can see herself with.
Before long, Brittany and Brandon started dating. The two shared a special bond over the fact that they both came from a similar past.
Both experienced issues with the legal system, so they could connect in that way.
Brandon had recently been released from prison after serving 10 years for armed robbery.
Brandon had gone to a convenience store and had robbed the clerk at gunpoint.
Just like Brittany, he was in the process of trying to reform his life after his time behind bars.
They kind of met at a time where they really needed one another.
Maybe she was soft in her heart for him because she understood where he was coming from.
After just a few months of dating, Brittany invited Brandon to move in with her.
He tells her, I'm having difficulty paying my rent. She takes that moment and she offers to let him move in. That's part of her personality. She's a caring, compassionate individual.
However, the emotional connection the two felt for each other was no match to their physical connection.
This is something that she was longing for, and she felt that she really connected with Brandon. Their relationship began to move very quickly.
Brandon becomes a stabilizing force for her that she's never had. Someone just understands her and loves her, and he provides that.
Anytime you felt like you've been missing out on love and haven't been able to find it, like this void is in your life, and now you have somebody to come and fill that void, that's a good feeling.
Love at first sight, a budding mental health career, Brittany was truly happy.
Brittany's feeling good. Things are falling together, and she feels like she's in the right path and doing the right things.
But little did Brittany know, her new love would push her back to where she started from. May 21st, 2017. Police are investigating a fatal shooting at a local Dallas motel.
The body had been found at the front lobby area.
When they get there, they see a man lying there in a pool of blood.
The victim didn't have an ID card, so they don't know his identity immediately.
As they're surveying the lobby, officers make an important observation.
The responding officer notices that there's no blood spatter. So at that point, he determines that this is not the crime scene.
Officers notice a faint trail of blood and follow it outside.
Police follow the blood trail up the stairs. Their guns are drawn.
The trail stops at room 608. The door is slightly ajar. Police ready themselves before they make entry.
They don't know if there's a shooter in the room. They don't know if there's a victim in the room.
Police burst into the door, hoping they're not entering into a gunfight. But what's beyond the door is just the beginning. And soon, police will discover a desperate woman determined to please her man, no matter the cost.
Brittany found herself being willing to do almost anything in the name of love.
When Brittany Pollard met Brandon Jordan in the spring of 2017, it was love at first sight.
Brandon and Brittany, they really hit it off. She felt so hard for Brandon.
The two bonded over similar run-ins with the law.
He also had a past history where he served time in prison, and they were trying to get on the right path.
They get the second chance, another chance to make things right.
Brittany was in school for her dream job in the mental health field, and she was helping Brandon get back on his feet.
Brittany was taking classes to become a psychiatric nurse, and she let Brandon stay with her because he didn't have a place to go, and she wanted to help him.
Brittany was sure great things were in the couple's future. But little did she know, in her quest to help her new man, she'd ultimately derail her own future. May 21st, 2017. Dallas police are investigating a recent motel shooting.
The clerk called 911 to let him know they found the man dead in the lobby and that he had been shot twice in the chest.
Detectives have determined that the lobby where the victim was found deceased isn't their crime scene.
They found a trail of blood, and they believe it would take them to where the shooting took place.
With guns drawn, police prepare for entry into room 608.
They don't know what they're going to find. They don't know if there's a shooter in there.
Police burst inside and clear the room. It appears the gunman is long gone. Within minutes, detectives arrive on scene. As they look around, they find clues indicating what happened earlier that night.
There was a small amount of blood near the bed. They found shell casings that were consistent with a .380. The bed frame had also been shot.
Police also find a wallet sitting on a bedside table.
There was hundreds of dollars, so an indication of robbery wasn't quite there.
However, the wallet does indicate one thing: the victim's identity. 40-year-old Alejandro Lopez.
According to his ID, he was a Dallas local. So at that point, they weren't sure why he had got a hotel room for the night.
But who killed Alejandro? And where are they now? As officers continue searching the room for clues, detectives are faced with the difficult task of informing Alejandro's family of what's happened.
They were able to locate the information for Alejandro's family and contact them.
The family was very, very upset. And they just couldn't believe that really happened to him because of the person that he is. Who wants to hurt him?
Alejandro's family tells detectives he was beloved by everyone who knew him.
He had a sweet personality. He was a hardworking man. He worked in construction. He really believed in supporting his family.
He would give you his shirt off his back tattoo. This great guy to be around.
After detectives wrap up their phone call with Alejandro's family, they're informed that the motel has surveillance footage of the property. Detectives meet with the motel clerk to view the footage. First, the clerk pulls up video of the motel lobby.
Alejandro making his way to the manager's office, opening the door. Most of that is captured on video.
When he got there, there was no one there. He collapsed and he's just gasping for air.
The clerk then pulls up the video feed located near room 608. As luck would have it, they see Alejandro exit the room.
They see the victim stagger out of the door and go toward the office.
Detectives ask the clerk to scrub the footage back further. And that's when they hit pay dirt.
They see the two suspects in this case. One is a tall African-American male.
And this man had his hand on his pocket, most likely on his gun. Then an African-American woman with bright red hair and a colorful dress runs out.
The female has on a very distinctive dress. It's a tube-like dress with a lot of colorful flowers.
Luckily, the motel clerk is able to recognize the male assailant.
And he says, that's Brandon Jordan. He's been staying here for a while.
The clerk says Brandon's room is on the floor below the victim's. The clerk also recognizes the woman in the footage, but he's not able to provide her name.
The motel staff tell the detectives that, we really don't know her, only that she hangs out with Brandon.
She wasn't actually listed as a party in that room.
Detectives ask the clerk to pull up the surveillance footage from outside Brandon's room. When they view it, they see that the couple had stopped back by the room before they fled the area.
Within minutes after the crime, they got a few things together and fled where they were living.
Based on the footage, it looked like they hadn't returned since.
Detectives put out a bolo for the two suspects and prepare to search Brandon's room.
They go into the room and they find a number of things. They found a bunch of mail addressed to Brandon Jordan.
They also found some mail that belongs to Brittany Pollard.
Now they had a female's name as well.
When detectives continue searching the room, they find their most valuable piece of evidence yet.
They found a gun that was involved in the shooting.
The gun was actually put in the desk of that hotel room, and the caliber is consistent with the shell casings that they had found at the crime scene.
It seems the couple had stopped back by the room to stash the gun.
Brandon didn't want to get caught with the gun. He wanted to leave it there in that room.
As police continue to process the crime scene, one officer notices someone unexpected heading in their direction.
Officer see this African-American female come walking up in a colorful dress with the red hair. Bells go off. Could that be our person that we saw in the surveillance video?
She walks again right by officers and attempts to go into the room.
Officers stop the woman, and she identifies herself as Brittany Pollard.
This is the same name found on the mail in Brandon Jordan's room.
It's unbelievable that she will return to a crime scene, especially with cops swarming the place.
She tells officers she left something in the room and needs to get inside.
Officers arrest her on the spot. They told her she was caught on tape wearing the same dress, leaving the victim's room just moments after he was shot.
Brittany flies into a frantic fit.
They arrested her. Brittany started crying. She was kind of hysterical.
She was insistent that she's not guilty.
Brittany finally calms down and is taken to the police car. As detectives are putting her into the vehicle, she says something that piques their interest.
She just started talking, hey, I didn't do anything. I know who did. Detectives were in fact interested. They were trying to figure out all the pieces to this puzzle, and now they had somebody who had information. She says, I can show you where he is.
May 21st, 2017. Dallas detectives are investigating the shooting death of 40-year-old Alejandro Lopez.
After getting shot twice, he managed to make it from the room on the second floor all the way down to the lobby area. He's taking his last breaths, and he doesn't make it.
Police have just arrested Brittany Pollard as she attempted to enter suspected gunman Brandon Jordan's motel room.
She was hysterical. She was scared. She was crying. So she was really upset because she felt like she didn't do anything, so why am I being arrested?
As police are putting Brittany into the patrol car, she makes a shocking revelation.
She said, I can take you to his locations. Let me show you where he is. Let me show you where he hangs out. Just to make sure that they knew, I'm on your side. I'm not on his.
When Brittany was arrested and she was placed in a car, she knew that the detectives probably knew it was Brandon because the room was registered to him.
Brittany tells detectives Brandon is hiding out at a friend's house.
She says she's never been there, but he gave her the address so she could meet him.
She told the cops she can lead them to Brandon.
Detectives are suspicious of Brittany's sudden willingness to cooperate. After all, she was seen in the surveillance footage with Brandon just moments after Alejandro's murder.
Brittany was insistent that she's not guilty. She's insistent that she's not a party. She's not involved in any of this, and I just want to help the police.
Detectives know they need to find Brandon Jordan as soon as possible, so they decide to take Brittany up on her offer.
This is someone who's armed and dangerous. He had just killed a man. They don't know if he's out there on a killing spree or if this was just a one-off kind of thing. So they immediately have an interest to go find this Brandon Jordan guy.
Brittany gives detectives the address for a house on the north side of town.
While the detectives had Brittany in the back of the car going to look for Brandon, I think at first they think she was really trying to help them, but the detective discovered that Brandon wasn't here or there.
Brittany insists she made a mistake.
She says she had the address wrong, but she's positive she has it now.
Brittany gives detectives a new address, and they skeptically put it into their GPS. But Brittany continues to lead them from one dead end to another.
After you go to several different places and there's no Brandon, you're starting to realize that, this is a wild goose chase. She's just giving us a runaround because she really don't want us to find Brandon because she's protecting him.
This was her way of getting officers off of his trail, protecting her man again.
She was just trying to give Brandon more time to figure out what he was going to do and try to evade the authorities.
Realizing they've been duped, detectives cut the con short and take Brittany back to the station. As the sun rises on Dallas, detectives sit down with Brittany for a formal interrogation.
At this point, they knew of her background and they knew of her assault charge when she was younger.
The cops see that she spent 8 years behind bars, but they also see she's taking classes at a community college.
It seems she's learned from her past mistakes and perhaps gotten mixed up with the wrong man.
Usually it's going to be the boyfriend that's the mastermind. In this case, they just thought that, Brandon was in charge. He called the shots. Brittany just did as instructed.
They tell her, listen, you're going to take the fall for this if you're not honest with us. You need to come clean and tell us the truth and tell us how this went down.
But Brittany keeps her lips sealed.
She's still, in a sense, covering for him, wanting to make sure that he's okay. Wherever he is, I'm going to delay the police a little bit to give him a head start, to make sure that he's well taken care of, putting her man first and not fully thinking about consequences or herself in that moment.
With Brittany not willing to budge, police bring out their secret weapon.
Police had confiscated Brittany's phone during the arrest, and they got a warrant to search her texts and phone calls. And when they did this, they struck gold.
The detectives bring out Brittany's phone. She looks totally defeated. She knows what's in there. The detectives know what's in there. She knows the jig is up.
The text message was probably the most damning part of all the evidence.
At that point, Brittany knows she's in danger of going back to prison for a second time. But that isn't going to stop her from continuing to protect her man.
Although she was caught herself, still in her mind, she was trying to figure out ways to protect Brandon.
May 2017. Dallas detectives are interviewing 33-year-old Brittany Pollard, one of the suspects in the murder of 40-year-old Alejandro Lopez.
They had surveillance footage of Brittany and her boyfriend, Brandon Jordan, leaving the victim's motel room just moments after he was shot.
Detectives are frustrated with Brittany. They know she has a checkered past and seemingly has finally got her life in order. So why is she back on the wrong side of the law?
She had taken officers on a wild goose chase. She refuses to talk to them until the police bring out the phone.
Brittany has been uncooperative, to say the least. In order to get her to talk, detectives confront her with the shocking evidence they found on her cell phone.
The text message said, "I'm in room 608. Hurry up and come rob the man I'm with."
The text message was probably the most damning part of all the evidence.
It's clear, you can see that Robert was demoted.
Faced with the irrefutable truth, Brittany breaks down.
Once she was confronted with the text message, she says, "Yes, we intended to rob, but we didn't intend to kill."
Detectives tell Brittany to back up and start from the beginning. She explains it all started a couple months after she and Brandon moved in together.
All the excitement and fun of the relationship depleted pretty quickly because they had to focus just on surviving day to day, and it was a struggle.
Brittany says rent and tuition bills began to stack up, and before long, the couple was evicted.
Brandon and Brittany moved out of the apartment and it's a motel. It's about $50 a day to stay there.
Brittany says that while the motel offered them a quick refuge, coming up with the daily cash proved difficult.
They lived pretty much day to day. Brandon sold a little bit of weed and a little bit of dope to help raise money to pay for their motel room.
But before long, Brandon came up with a plan to get them more of the cash they needed.
Brandon knew that robbery was a quick and easy way to get money.
Brandon suggested that she go out and meet someone and flirt and take it full force.
He wanted her to use her charm and her smile and her body to find a man and think that she was into him, but really all along the plan was to rob him.
Brittany's a smart woman. She knows that this isn't the right thing to do, but I think she also wants to meet the needs of Brandon.
Ultimately, Brittany agrees to find a man and bring him back to the motel, where Brandon can rob him at gunpoint.
I think that she did it because it benefited him and it made him happy, and that's exactly what she wanted to do, was keep Brandon happy.
Brittany insists the plan was never to kill anyone.
It was supposed to be a one-time thing until they got back on their feet.
Of course, this puts Brittany in a compromising situation, but she also loved her man, and she perceived it as a means of survival.
Brittany confesses that they put their plan into motion at a nearby bar.
She sees Alejandro sitting at the bar, spending money on drinks, and thought that he'll be the perfect target.
She sees that money. She understands that this is a jackpot.
Brittany walked up to Alejandro and started speaking Spanish. He was really excited to meet someone who he could talk to.
He was kind of shy, didn't know how to talk to women, so when the opportunity arose when a female approached him, naturally he's going, buy into that.
So with the little bit of Spanish that Brittany knew, she was able to connect with him even the more so. And he most likely let his guard down and was able to bring it into his safe space.
Brittany tells detectives that she and Alejandro talked and drank for hours. Then, Brittany suggested they rent a motel room to keep the party going.
Brittany suggested that they go back to a motel, but what she didn't tell him is that's where her and Brandon were living.
Brittany says once they got back to the motel room, she continued her act.
She's flirting with Alejandro, waiting for the perfect moment to text Brandon.
It was clear Alejandro was really into her and wanted to take things to the next level.
Before things went too far, Brittany got up to go to the bathroom and secretly sent the signal to Brandon.
Brittany surreptitiously texts Brandon and says, "I'm in room 608 with a man. Come rob him, hurry."
Brittany is having mixed emotions at that moment. She probably was sweating. She probably had a rapid heartbeat.
Little did Brittany know that one quick text would spark a whirlwind of chaos that would change all of their lives forever.
Brittany had no idea it would go this far. She said she feared for their lives.
May 2017, Dallas, Texas. While Brittany Pollard sits in police custody in connection with the murder of Alejandro Lopez, her boyfriend, Brandon Jordan, remains at large.
Brittany and Brandon had came up with a plan to get some quick cash to pay their rent.
The plan was for Brittany to seduce a man, take him back to the motel where her and Brandon were living, text Brandon when and where everything was going down, and commit to stick up.
Brittany tells police after she brought her target back to the motel, she sent Brandon a text from the bathroom to let him know the plan was a go.
She actually texts Brandon saying, "Hey, I have a guy in this room. Come and rob him, hurry."
Brittany came out of the bathroom, sat down next to Alejandro, and continued flirting so he wouldn't get suspicious.
Brittany says seconds later, Brandon came bursting through the door, pointing a gun at Alejandro and demanding money. But the robbery went terribly awry.
This man comes in, he's towering over Alejandro, and Alejandro has no idea what's going on.
She said it was very chaotic. There was an argument. Brandon didn't speak Spanish. Alejandro didn't speak English.
She said Alejandro responds by pulling out a box cutter and trying to lunge at them.
She said Alejandro was swinging the box cutter around.
Brittany says Brandon then opened fire, shooting Alejandro twice in the chest.
Brittany insists that Brandon shot Alejandro in self-defense and that Brandon was just protecting the both of them.
When Alejandro was shot, there was chaos going on in her mind, that this was not what she expected.
Brittany explains that no one was supposed to get hurt, but they were in fear for their lives, and Brandon had to shoot.
It was all focused on Alejandro. He's the one who pulled out the weapon. He's the one that did this. He was the aggressor.
Brittany's story seems unlikely. However, detectives have confirmed that the victim had a box cutter in his possession that night.
Medical examiners did find a box cutter in Alejandro's pocket.
Brittany says that somehow this person with this box cutter decided to try to attack a person holding a gun, which doesn't make a lot of sense, and it didn't make a lot of sense to law enforcement either.
If he did have the box cutter open, and once he got shot, he'd have dropped it. He wouldn't have taken time to close and put it back in his pocket.
Detectives believe Brittany is throwing the blame on Alejandro to protect Brandon, but they encourage her to continue with her story.
She was saying that they ended up shooting him, so they ran out because they got scared before they had a chance to even take the money.
Brittany says they then went back to Brandon's room, hid the gun, and fled on foot as they heard sirens in the distance.
I'm thinking they're pretty scared at that point. They're not fully thinking things through, but almost in a panic to leave behind the gun.
Brittany says they didn't get far before they realized their mistake. And Brittany volunteered to go back.
When they got off the premise, it dawned on them, oh my gosh, we have to get that weapon out of the room.
He was a convicted felon, and it would have been criminal for him to just be in possession of a weapon, period, much less that he just shot someone with it. That shows the level of dedication that she had to Brandon, that she would be willing to risk her freedom in order to go and get a weapon that he didn't want caught on him.
Detectives ask Brittany once again, where is Brandon? But it's no surprise, she pleads ignorance.
She wasn't going to give the police anything that would have helped lead them to him.
The one thing that stayed consistent was that she was trying to help Brandon.
At that point, Brittany Pollard is charged with capital murder. With one suspect behind bars, detectives focus on Brandon Jordan.
The detectives are just covering all their bases. They were determined to lock up Brandon.
But before long, detectives receive a very interesting phone call.
The police actually got an anonymous tip from someone saying that Brandon was staying in an apartment complex.
Police rush to the apartment complex. Luckily, they catch Brandon on his way out the door and apprehend him.
Brandon cooperates, puts his hand up, and he's arrested without incident.
Brandon pretty much knew he was caught. It was over.
Now that they finally have Brandon in custody, detectives are eager to hear his side of the story.
With all of Brittany's lies, detectives just want the truth. She's been trying super hard to protect Brandon. However, what's Brandon's story gonna be? Is he gonna flip the script on her?
May 23rd, 2017. Dallas police now have both Brandon Jordan and Brittany Pollard in custody for the murder of Alejandro Lopez.
Brandon got taken down to the station, got interviewed by the detectives, waived his rights, gave him a statement, and told them what happened.
Brandon gives the same story that Brittany gave, that Alejandro had a box cutter and he was attacking them.
Detectives slap Brandon with the charge of capital murder as well, just like his girlfriend.
They had a text message that clearly indicated that he was killed during a robbery. So now we went from murder to now capital murder.
One person's life is lost, his family is impacted, and it was because of the lure of quick and easy money.
In February of 2019, Brandon Jordan's trial gets underway inside a Dallas County courtroom. Brittany Pollard elects not to testify against her man.
For Brittany, she wanted to really prove to her man that no matter what, I'm gonna ride or die and be there for you. We're like Bonnie and Clyde. I'm gonna show you that I'm here for you no matter what.
The prosecution shoots down the couple's claim that Brandon shot Alejandro in self-defense.
This was a clear capital murder. We have a robbery and we can prove it.
They were planning to rob someone and take their money, and in order to do that, they were also prepared to kill.
The state theorizes that when Brandon barged in, Alejandro became terrified and tried to leave.
They believe the box cutter never left Alejandro's pocket. Brittany must have saw it when he pulled out his wallet of cash.
Brandon's a big guy. He's pointing a gun. He's blocking the door. He's speaking a language Alejandro does not understand. I'm sure he's pretty scared.
Prosecutors say that when the victim went to escape, Brandon shot him twice in the commotion. But the two shots didn't kill Alejandro, and the couple panicked.
Our theory is that he tried to pull that trigger more. He wanted that money. Could it be that the gun jammed? It's quite possible, and that's why he was only shot twice. At that point, I believe Brandon and Brittany said, oh my gosh, we have to figure out what to do. We got to get out of here.
The two then fled the room left the victim for dead. No regard for his safety or his life. They were only concerned with themselves.
When it's the defense's turn, they maintain Brandon's statement and contend he shot Alejandro in self-defense.
He truly felt that all he was doing was defending himself and defending Brittany.
In the end, the jury sides with the prosecution. Brandon Jordan is found guilty of capital murder and sentenced to life in prison. In the wake of Brandon's sentencing, Brittany Pollard pleads guilty to avoid trial.
Brittany Pollard pleaded guilty to murder, and she was sentenced to 33 years in prison.
I don't know if she had just thrown in the towel and accepted her fate, or she just came to a crossroads where she said, you know what, I just need to own up to what I did.
Even though in the eyes of the law, justice was served, there's nothing that can bring back Alejandro Lopez.
All he knew was work and home and his friends and supporting his family back home. All of that was cut short because two people got greedy and wanted to take something that they didn't work for.
As for Brittany Pollard, she was a reformed convict with a budding career in the mental health field, someone who had worked hard to overcome her past, only to have Brandon Jordan bring her right back to where she started from.
She's probably thinking, what have I gotten myself into? Oh my goodness, prison again. I just can't believe this is happening. Almost like being in a nightmare.
Brittany's love for Brandon had ended up costing her the freedom she so cherished.
She did this all in the name of love. She was willing to risk it all to prove to Brandon how much she really loved him. And she didn't think about the consequences at that moment. All she could think of was, I need to show Brandon I'm really serious about us.
In the end, Alejandro lost his life and they still didn't gain any money. Both of them have really ruined their lives, and he lost his for no reason.
When you're looking for a fresh start, love can lift you to great heights and make you feel reborn. But some things in life really are too good to be true. That same love that made you feel whole can destroy you in an instant and pull you back into everything you fought so hard to escape.